What up, YouTube? I want to talk to you guys today about raw dogging it. And the question is, are you a raw dogger? What I really mean is, I just want to talk about raw food-ism, schism, raw food dogma. Um, I know there's a lot of people out there that are really adamant about only eating raw foods. To the point where it's a major crutch in their transition or their ability to gain higher levels of vitality. Um, that's just another benefit of the Mucusless Diet Healing System. It doesn't have a definitive diet. It's not like the starch solution or the raw food diet or this or that. It's a transitional healing system to take you from here to, the stars, really. So, just to get right into it, I tend to see a lot of raw foodists eating really high fatty foods, such as nuts, seeds, avocado, and those are the whole foods that are still considered raw. There's other levels, such as like nut butters. There's even like raw cakes and raw cookies and raw crackers, what have you. There's like the whole spectrum of like the sad raw food diet now. I used to joke about the sad vegan diet. Now there's just like that next level of sad dieting. Let's see here. So I like to talk about starch quite a bit when I elude on the raw food dogma. For example, starch. So say somebody's eating raw oats in the morning, which I was recently talking to somebody. They said that they're having digestion issues with the raw oats and berries. I just told them to cook the oats, and they no longer had the indigestion, the gas, the bloating. I'm not saying to eat oats in the morning. I would probably advise not even eating, break fast, maybe some juice, something light, some liquids. But yeah, so oat is highly starchy, mucus forming. That's why when you cook it, it's just like slimy. But it is very, very, very difficult and inflammatory and irritating for the body to try to process raw starch. It's just nowhere near as easy as if you were to try to cook it and break down this starchy, gluey substance into something that's more appealing for the body, that's more digestible. The complex sugars are now broken down into a simpler form. Because if you're putting sugars into the body, it can only use them in the most simplest form, such as like fructose, glucose. It all breaks down into, I don't know, like science calls it ATP or whatever, but simpler, the easier it is for the body. And that's just like common sense, right? If you're having a conversation with somebody, it's going to be easier to understand them if they're speaking the same language, or if you have like less people talking to you. Simpler is just always easier and less confusing to work with. What's some other raw food dogma that I see? I see a lot of raw foodists coming up with these elaborate, super fancy meal combinations where they just have like nuts and seeds and then like fruit in there, and then what are some other things? Dates. Like take a pie, for example. They've got like oh my gosh, coconut too, like blending up like coconut meat and then like seeds and dates and all these things together, and it's just like indigestion. Okay, for example, when you eat one of those raw food meals, you might just be like, oh man, I'm feeling stuffed. I'm feeling like this really heavy feeling. That's just like eating, I mean, it's not just like, but you could think of eating like a burger where it's like starch and protein. It's going to be really heavy like that. And it's going to be super addictive. And if you're in that raw food mindset and not a healing, eliminative, cleansing mindset, then you're probably going to start eating these highly addictive, fatty, mucus-forming foods such as nuts, seeds, avocados, raw whatever. You can buy packaged raw whatever nowadays. And you've got it in your head like, oh, as long as it's raw, it's got the enzymes, it's pure, it's got the nourishing, rebuilding qualities. And getting like caught up in like the food values and like the whole nutrition theory that our cells are, need these nutrients and calories to survive, and or as like a form of fuel or energy, when it's just not true. Well, I mean, look at so many high-level fasters and practicing breatharians. Yes, practicing. I mean, look at Brother Air. His cells don't run off nutrition or calories, I'll tell you that much. But like I was saying, it's just totally stuck in this small spectrum of transition and not focusing on the eliminative principles. So, for example, foods like, you have broccoli, asparagus, radish, Brussels sprouts, beets, zucchinis, yams, sweet potato, squash, carrots, peas, pumpkins. All of these are going to be highly starchy in nature, but when they're properly cooked, the starchy, gluey binding substance will be broken down into like a simple fruit sugar, as Eric called it, which is going to be mucus lean, or maybe even what he refers to as mucus less. Although in the book, I think at one point he does say that like even like a sweet potato is mucus lean, but it's going to eliminate extremely well. Or, like broccoli, for example, it's so tough that it's going to eliminate so much easier if you were to cook it properly. And he does also note that wrong cooking destroys the food value and the eliminative properties. As does keeping it in its raw form. So, for example, like with zucchini or broccoli, I like to pull out the bamboo steamer, and maybe steam it for like 3 or 4 minutes. It's still going to be like crunchy, and it's still going to have a very form texture to it, but it's got a different taste, it's got a different smell. You can totally tell that the starches are now or the complex sugars are now broken down into simpler sugars, just because it has a sweetness about it, and the starch is broken down and will create a form of roughage for the body, and it will create a broom. So you'll have the digestible sugar and the brooming effect, which is going to be so much more beneficial than, say, like making a soup, where you just throw all these things in a big pot of water or whatever you're using and cook it for a couple hours. You pull those vegetables out, they're just going to be like straight mushy goo, and that stuff will just sit in your intestines, because your intestines don't have anything to work with when they have the, say, lightly steamed broccoli or zucchini, asparagus, whatever. It's got stuff to work with. It's just not like a smoothie, for example, like a thick smoothie going down that's just like, so yeah, I mean, it's going to be so much more beneficial to steam or lightly cook starches. Transitionally, though, like, this is all transitionally. I would way rather see somebody eat a cooked sweet potato than some raw nuts, seeds, and dates all mixed together. That's literally, okay, so dates, lots of sugar, nuts, lots of fat and amino acids. And so you're literally trying to have your body digest the three major forms of food at the same time, which is incredibly difficult. Incredibly, like it just doesn't work. Also, starches are acid forming. So if you're eating raw starches, they will be acidic in nature, as will nuts, seeds, high protein, high fatty foods. And think about this. Why do they feed starches to cattle? To fatten them up. And fat doesn't really have any place in the human body. It's just partially digested waste that's stagnating in the system. And that waste in your system, that constipation, on another note, is going to cause physical ailment. It's going to cause emotional ailments, or cause you to be emotional. It's going to cause mental illness, or just like, okay, so for example, on a physical level, you're getting fat, you're just causing a bunch of wear and tear and strain, acidosis. On an emotional level, you're going to be emotional. You're going to feel so many more emotions because you've got a physical blockage. Emotions are energy in motion. And so you're literally just creating a blockage of energy, which is going to cause someone to be emotional, which is also going to lead to what I like to call is like mental static. So say somebody just has all these crazy thoughts run through their head that are just really negative, really acidic thoughts, because it's all the same thing. It's all obstruction. You notice when you cleanse for a long period of time, your mental space just becomes organically calmer and more relaxed, and you really begin to use the mind as a tool and not have it be this like egoic control center, whatever you want to call it. You can use the mind when you need it, but put it down when you don't need it. That's essentially what it's there for. And not just be bombarded by these thoughts constantly that are just like super stressing. But I digress. Another thing to look at is dehydration. Dehydration is like also a form of obstruction. It's all the same thing. So starches are going to be very dehydrating. If you look at a carrot, it's highly starchy in nature, and then it's also got a very low liquid content, as do other starches. Where you look at juicier fruits that don't have the starch, they have high liquid, high fiber. So yeah, eating raw starchy foods are going to be very dehydrating. And like the whole idea of raw food-ism is just like another fad diet. And I'm not saying it like raw food's like the worst diet ever. There's so many worse foods or less complementary foods that you could be putting into your physiology. But a lot of them are just like highly mucus forming. And back to dehydrating, like nuts and seeds and all these crazy concoctions and powders, and there's like literally it is just like a whole world of things to be sold to you. It's like, all these gurus like, oh, buy this powder and buy this and buy that, and it's raw and it's got all these living enzymes and all these nutrients, where if you just read the Mucusless Diet Healing System, went out, followed the transition principles for a few months, you could be leaps and bounds farther when you clean the waste from your colon. Like, that's the issue. The issue is not nutrition. The issue is efficiency. and constipation. When we're so plugged up and there's so much plaque in our bowels, the raw food powders and all this and that don't even matter, because they're not even getting into our system because there's so much shit there already. And if we were to just cleanse and eliminate the waste from the bowels, we would realize that we don't need all these fancy powders and shit. We've got exactly what nature provided us: fruits, leafy greens, and I personally enjoy using herbs as well. It's just because we process things so inefficiently when we're just full of shit, essentially. What are some other things on the raw the raw doggin lifestyle? I think that's it, guys. I already made a follow-up video. I'm just redoing this one because the upload didn't work, or the editing didn't work. And so dlb949@msn.com is my email address if you want to get a hold of me, have questions about the transition. Also a certified botanical detox specialist with Dr. Robert Morse. So if you want to get more into herbs for, moving that lymph, removing the acidosis, mainly with the herbs are addressing specific symptomatic ailments or issues, however you want to phrase it, and then opening up channels of elimination. Herbs will, like fruits, they're just removing the mucus to open up the body to use that good old prana, that air. Like Arnold Ehret said, we are air gas engines, and I don't care if it's raw or what it is. If you're putting sand in your engine, shit's not running good. Peace out.